Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
We looked last week at dealing with the question of sin and what sin was from the standpoint of looking at chapter 3 of the book of Genesis and its resulting effects as it kind of metastasized outward. And we ended by saying about the banishment was not God's abandonment, etc. And if you have your catechism with you, take me a second to discover. Get it lost. Oh well. Anyway, forget that. What it has to do with is, now find it. We'll take a little break and I'll find it. It has to do with the idea of the promise of redemption to Eve and the Blessed Mother as the new Eve. And we talked a bit about that. But it's in your catechism that I had marked. But anyway, I'll find it and then go over it with you. We want now to shift gears a bit, and we want to now shift into the lane occupied by philosophy. But it'll require a momentary and turn around and go back. We started with Thales, and we indicated that dealt with the question of what is everything made of. Huh? And we came up with four elements. Huh? Yes.
Four causes.
Water,
What are the four
fire,
elements?
water, fire, air,
Water.
and earth.
Water. Go ahead.
Fire,
Fire,
air, and earth.
air, and earth. And we saw that these were the basic elements out of which things were made. But it's asking that first question of what is everything made out of? What is the source of everything? And they had this to work with. And we saw that theory operated for water, others for fire, air, all of these kinds of things. So what you had here was then the development of a kind of pluralism that of course brought up the question of who's right. It's always a question when you get pluralism with competing answers claiming to be true, etc. Well then, how do I know which one is which? And we indicated that we had Parmenides and we had Heraclitus. Huh? For Parmenides, the most important thing was not change, because he considered change to be an illusion. Remember, for him, nothing changes, because even what appears to be a change is nothing more than a kind of unfolding of what already is. In other words, if it wasn't already in there, in the entity that is changing or mutating, it could not have become something new in and of itself. It had to already be packaged in there. It was just latent in developing. Huh? On television, if you're over 55, I think most of you are. I said most. For those who tell the truth. But anyway, they want you to go get a shot, of course, naturally, go get your shot. If you have shingles, because the shingles are hiding inside of you. That's the thing. So you're walking around at any moment ready to come down with a case of shingles. You have that. So it's a kind of latent thing, but it was already there, and you got it because of chicken pox or the measles or something that supposedly you had, etc. So it's that kind of thing. For Heraclitus, so Parmenides is permanence. Heraclitus is change. You can't put your foot in the same stream twice because it's a different stream. And he is overwhelmed with the reality of change. So you have permanence and change. In addition to that, you also have the question of the one and the many. How do you deal with that? Again, simple example. That doesn't qualify. This is a book. This is a book. If I said, okay, you understand it. This is a book. And yet, no one would confuse the two together. Yet we call both of them books. They're different weight, sizes. They occupy a different configuration, etc. They contain even different subject matter. But we say book, book. We look at that thing and we say book, although it's near blue. But it's a book. That's brown. And that's a scaled-down Bible right there. Huh? That's the New Testament. So it's missing its foundation, but that's all right. It's there.
It's all there.
Is it there?
New American Bible.
Oh, that's the New American. I'm sorry, I can't read.
Tiny words.
I have eyes, but I can't read. I apologize for placing you. Thank you for that. So you see what I'm getting at. Person, human being, etc. And yet very different. Very different in configuration, in gender, in age, so on and so forth. All the qualities that one may have. And yet we still put it in the envelope of the genus of human being, Homo sapien, etc. So how are we able to do that? Well, in looking at this, you notice we're making a progression from the physical or the material, whichever you prefer. Material is probably a better word. From the material to the conceptual, or that of mind or thought. Because we have Pythagoras, and Pythagoras, of course, says that it can all be understood in terms of mathematics.
Thank you.
All in terms of mathematics. And so we're getting even to a deeper level of abstraction here. And what I'm saying is we're progressing from the material to the conceptual here, but we're also making a progression from the cosmological, that is, what's everything made out of? What's all of this stuff? So it's the cosmological, and we are now going to approach the question of what we might call the existential, that is, the self. What Freud will call, of course, the ego, the I. Now, this shift says that we're going to move from this cosmological, this idea of stuff, down to the self. And the self in terms of the ability to conceptualize, etc. Because we can't get any agreement here. But now when we come here, when we first start out, we're going to run into the very same thing. A kind of pluralism that takes place. And this gives birth to a group of philosophers and people called sophists. Sophists. The word sophomore is most appropriate to students in high school who are in their second year. The word sophomore means wise fool. And they're wise fools because in the second year they know everything. Okay? They've survived the first year. They're not yet in the upper level, but they're not in the first year. Sort of like a corporal to a sergeant or a lieutenant. You run to the corporal as if the corporal knows everything, and then he blames the sergeant. Huh? That's the way it goes. So sophists grow up. And what the sophists say, look, we tried this, and we can't get any agreement. Now we're going to plunge into this, and there's no agreement. So you know what? There's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as truth. It's all relative. Your relatives, my relative. It's all relative. Because we can't agree on a truth. So therefore, what then is the goal of philosophy? The goal of philosophy cannot be then the attainment of truth, because there is none. The sophist, the role of philosophy is to win arguments. Is to win arguments. That's the goal. And how do you win arguments? You know how to manipulate language. In other words, they're the precursors of lawyers. Okay? What it is. That is, and so what you did was you hired, and sophists worked for money. They were hired hands. Socrates, none of those philosophers, they weren't about money. They were about whether or not you were worthy to take as a student because you really had a desire to know the truth. And if you didn't, we don't want you. Because to get into with a teacher was very different than this. You just show up, or you sign up in college, or whatever you're going to do, and all this kind of stuff. No. You had to come, and you had to indicate that you were serious and worthy. It's much like the European system is very different than the American system. The American system of education is sitting down, taking notes, getting tests, reading a book in order to get the answers for the test, and so on and so forth. the British system, or the European system especially, is very, very different. We walk around today in the American university and we say, what courses are you taking? What classes are you taking? Things like that. You never really hear a serious student at Oxford or Cambridge or Heidelberg or any of those places. They ask you, who are you reading? Who are you reading? What you do is you have to go to a professor and say, I would like to study under you. And what does that mean? The professor gives you a bunch of books and says, okay, I want you to read these things and we'll meet next week to discuss them. Because a teacher is not really a teacher in the American sense. The teacher is a tutor. The tutor. And so you go there and you better have read the assignment because it's something very simple. You're no longer, I don't want you as a student. That's it. Well, you don't understand. That's going to wreck my career. You don't have a career. You're not here. I'm not a careerist. This is not a technical school. And I'm not here to shove stuff in your head. I'm here to see what's in your head that might be able to be brought out. And so, if you don't do the reading, you will be dismissed immediately. Don't want you. That's it. Because I can spend my time with other students who are doing it. You're not. So therefore, you're not taking me seriously, you're not taking this class seriously, or this tutorial seriously, rather. So in order to show that I'm taking it seriously, you are no longer seriously here. So that's the way that works. Very, very different. Very, very different. And practically all of the classes end on the term in which you sit down for an oral examination. Save your paper and pencil and all that sort of stuff. It is simply you sit down and you engage in a tutorial dialogue about what the semester or what the period of time has been about. And on the basis of that, you get a pass-fail. And if you're very good, you get pass with distinction. And if you're really good, you get pass with high distinction. And that means that you can go on to a higher university, even past Cambridge or Harvard in some of their post-tutorial programs, etc. It's very, very different. It's very, very different. You don't sit in a classroom. You don't do all of those kind of things. It's you make appointments and you keep the appointment. You do keep the appointment. And you're not late for the appointment, by the way. You know, Oscar Wilde said the only trouble with being on time, there's nobody there to appreciate it. There won't be anybody there to appreciate it because you won't be there. That's considered really bad form. That's bad form. So it's very, very different. So the sophist would usually be hired by the rich folk. They were the one percenters, for those of you that are in that. By the way, I meant to begin by commending you all for being here tonight. I realize that you're sacrificing the 21st century version of Lincoln-Douglas debate. However, I do have a feeling that Lincoln and Douglas are not worried about their place in history compared to what will happen tonight. But nonetheless, very interesting. So you have the one percenters, and the sophists gained their money and reputation by how crafty and manipulative they were. They knew how to take word in sentences. They knew how to argue. In other words, it wasn't about truth, it was about winning an argument. And we see much of that today. We see much of that today, not simply in courtrooms, but we see that much today just in everyday life.
How crafty can you be? How sly? How manipulative? Commercials are full of it. So many things today. So you have this turn, and the sophist answer to the question of truth and all of this is, stop wasting your time. This is all a waste. And you know the great thing about that charge that philosophy is a waste of time? It is. Philosophy is a total, complete waste of time if you mean that you understand philosophy as a utilitarian tool or instrument. It's not. It's as useless as liturgy. Name me one thing more useless than liturgy. In a utilitarian way. I went to Mass in order to stay home. You missed the point. You don't go to Mass in order to. You go to Mass in order to enter into praise, glory, and thanksgiving to Almighty God. You don't go to Mass for something, because what happens then is that Mass then becomes a secondary thing to why you're really going. I'm really going in order to get. Well, suppose you wouldn't get it. Would you go? Well, no. Oh, what does that tell you? Or, I tried that saint and it doesn't work. That's a strange notion. But many people operate that way. They may not admit it, but that's what it is. Philosophy. You hear people say, studying philosophy, what good is that? Very simple, it's of no good. It's of absolutely no good. If you expect it to be something to some other end, leave philosophy alone, please, because you're corrupting philosophy and you don't have a clue as to what it's about. Philosophy has to do with the fulfillment and enrichment of your humanity. It's not towards a bigger paycheck or to get a cush job or to any of those things. It's about to help you to develop your humanity. That's a very important distinction to be made. You tell somebody, my God, you mean you went to school for a philosophy degree? What can you do with that? Nothing. Nothing. Nothing at all. And what it purports to do is to help you to fulfill your humanity as a human being. And therefore, if you are a business person and you have a business, I would much prefer to hire a person who is really devoted to philosophy than to hire a person who is simply an instrumentalist or a kind of utilitarian kind of mechanic who simply is interested in making something in order to get something in order to move somewhere else. Because if you have a good human being, that's 95 to 99% of any hire. I realize you say, well, I got to look at the resume. You don't hire resumes. You hire human beings as best as you can ascertain. I don't know of anybody who turns in a resume and where it says references, well, this person's really a crook, rotten, I couldn't stand him and everybody hated him. Please hire him. Who does that? Nobody, of course. No. Whenever I hired anybody, I wanted to see them teach. And I wanted to see them in different classes teaching before I even began to consider them for hire. Why? Well, an old professor at Tulane told me many years ago, Intelligent people are a dime a dozen. Walk on the campus at Tulane and shake the tree and they all fall out. That's not a problem. He said, I'm looking for the tree where you have people that truly are good and seek the truth. People who want to be good, flourishing human beings. That's a rare tree. And it's true. And I never forgot that. And he was right. Intelligent, smart. You might hire an intelligent, smart, homicidal maniac. Or a crook. So what I'm saying is that I understand the mindset today. The mindset today is utilitarian. How can I use it? How is this going to help me to the next step? And if I can, I'm not even going to consider it. It has a function, it has a functionality. But it's not valuable in itself. And that's what Pope Francis means when he continually talks about our throwaway culture. You throw away the McDonald's cup and you throw away life. It's all the same thing. I mean, come on. I mean, why am I fooling with all these old people? They're going to die anyway. We could use all those resources for the people who could recover, for the young people, to do all of these kinds of wonderful things, etc. Why worry about deformed babies? Why worry about the handicapped? I mean, my goodness, look at all the resources we could do and save and spend. I mean, come on. Especially in tough economic times. That thinking was tried in the 20th century, and you saw how well that worked out. Well, we need not do this to the 21st century, because in many ways it's our century. When we have throwaway life. When we have throwaway life. Discard life so cheaply. We used to say, oh, those people have no respect for life. Really? I don't think we can say that with the same bravado that we once said it. Just look at the landscape and ask yourself. So, this idea of truth, rid of that Socrates said, no such thing, so all I want to do is win arguments, so I can teach you how to win an argument in order to, whatever that to is that you decide. And you know what? It depends on each person. Then, hence, you now have opened the door not only to epistemological skepticism, where there's no such thing as truth or knowledge, but you've also opened the door to moral relativism. It's your values, your beliefs, whatever guides you. And if that's the case, I can never tell you right and wrong. You say, well, wait a minute. I'm not saying that's right for you, but it's right for me. If I want to engage in X behavior, and that behavior is deleterious to the individual, to others, etc., and I say, hey, have you thought about this? I mean, this is really not a good path to go. Hey, wait a minute. Don't get all judgy on me. Well, I'm not getting all judgy on you. I'm getting judgy on your rotten behavior. That's what I'm doing. After all, I think Jesus said this. I could be wrong. By your fruits you shall know them. First letter of John. Test the spirits. Test the spirits to see what they bring forth. See? Judging them, I don't know. I don't know anything about their soul. That's above my pay grade. What I do know is your behavior. And I know what your behavior produces. Can I comment about that? You bet I can. I bet you do. Don't tell me you invite everybody into your house to sit down and have your turkey dinner. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And if you're a decent parent, you tell your children, avoid so-and-so. Don't go with that group. Or horror of horrors, I'll take away your cell phone, which is probably grounds for a lawsuit. So you have those things. You have those things. And it's just all relative. And what happens is I can't enter into any discussion with you. And again, I'm back to the question of, well, if you think it's right, then you should go ahead and do it. Really? Really? In the 21st century, that's the most we can come up with. If you think it's right, go ahead and do it. I'll support you. You know some of the things people want to do? I hope you wouldn't support that. I hope you wouldn't say, well, if you think it's right, you need to sit down and do some real thinking. And I'll help you with that. I'll give you my experience. I'll give you my guidance out of what my faith says and what reason says. Ultimately, the decision is yours. But your decision, like your conscience, should be informed, properly developed. On following my conscience. Yeah, well, but your conscience can't strictly be informed by your instincts. It requires your intellect, because the mind is nature and God's experiment that it sounded an instinct. How many crimes and how many families are broken up and how many things take place because of impulse behavior? Simply react. You know, the idea that, and it gives one pause to think, for example, and again, and entering this real world of ours. These people who want individuals to be able to walk around with guns on them. I believe that a person should be able to own a gun. I'm not a Second Amendment, anti-Second Amendment, and all that kind of stuff. None of that's not the issue. But I realize as soon as you say that, everybody goes crazy, either one way or the other. What I'm saying is, you have people, and you have a gun in your car, because your car is considered an extension of your house. So you can keep a gun in your car if you have a permit. And you're riding, and somebody cuts you off, and a verbal confrontation develops, and then it escalates, and the person immediately runs, grabs the gun, and shoots the other person. It's there. These things happen. Allow a person to just, untrained, on anything, walk around with a gun on, concealed and unconcealed. As in some places, that's allowed. What I'm saying is that, once again, we've lost all sense of rationality here. It's all or nothing. Are you a proponent or opponent of the Second Amendment? Well, could we? No, don't be lukewarm. That's the only thing they know Jesus said. Don't be lukewarm or I'll vomit you from my mouth. That's the only thing they know. So it's either this or this. My Lord, are you kidding? You mean all this space is there for nothing? And if there is, this is where the demagogues rush in. If nature abhors a vacuum, so does conversation, rational conversation and debate in a civic society. If all you have are extremes, and you have no possibility of ever filling that vacuum in the middle, who fills it? The demagogue, the worst, the loudest, the most self-interested, etc., fills it. The commercialized, the manufacturing, all of that fills it. You see? And the sophists, they're perfectly satisfied with that. It's okay. Not a problem. It's fine. As long as you come away and win the argument. I remember years ago in the courtroom, and this was always a difficulty for law students when I would ask them about this. There are some attorneys that will never ask their client if they're guilty or not. If you watch Perry Mason, he's always answering and asking the question, are you guilty, are you innocent, and so on and so forth. I believe you. Okay. But a lot of them, they don't want to know. They don't want to know. Because their duty is to give you the best defense possible. A competent, full-throated defense. And we had this one case in criminal court. And this lady was in either her late 60s or early 70s. And she was going to the grocery store, her corner grocery store. And she had just the day previously cashed her retirement that she had gotten from her husband. He was dead, but the retirement payment transferred to her within this particular company. Okay. So she was walking to the grocery. It was in the afternoon. And she had her purse. Again, this is back probably in the late 60s, 70s. Doesn't matter. And she was walking and she had one of those purses where, here's one of those, and you put it around your arm, like ladies used to do. What they do now, I have no idea. But anyway, they used to walk like that. And this guy, lurching behind a car, came up behind her, grabbed the purse. Okay, allegedly, I got to say that. Allegedly, grabbed the purse. She got knocked to the ground. He grabbed the purse, pulled it open. Some people in the neighborhood saw this, and the men immediately took off after him because he ran, dropped the purse and ran. And as they were running, he tried to slide under a car that was parked. But one of the neighbors further up the road saw it and pointed that he was there. So the men now, in a significant number, were around the car. So if he tried to, he was safer under the car than he would had he come out. Trust me on that. And so the police came, arrested him, and he had to go to criminal court for felonious assault, felony theft, because it was about $700-800 that the lady had from the check, and the lady was injured. She had her glasses broken. She had a facial cut. She had a severe bruised shoulder, and her hip, and being knocked to the ground. All of that. Well, the case comes to court, and naturally, the guy demands a jury trial rather than a bench trial. Bench trial means you give up the jury, and you say the judge will hear the case and decide it on his own. You have to give that up. They can't just take it from you. Okay, so he wants a jury trial. This is an Orleans parish. All right. So they the officers are there and explain what happened. They have some witnesses there, and a couple of the witnesses had to say that they did not actually see him do it, but they joined the running of those who saw it. Where were you standing when you saw this? I was behind my window or behind my screen door, and I saw this happening. Well, how far is the screen door from where this thing happened? Do you wear glasses? Did you have your glasses on? So you admit that you just ran after this person because others were running after him, but you didn't see any of this. So in other words, you are a potential vigilante. Is that what you're telling us? What did you intend on doing to him? Would you think that he was exercising good reason for running from you mob? You all were a mob running after him. Who in their right mind wouldn't run away and try to hide? Then it came to the lady. And she had indicated in her deposition that she was walking and he came from behind her. She said, so you didn't really see him? No. Do you wear glasses? Yes. Did you have your glasses on? Well, no, they were knocked to the ground. So you didn't really have your glasses on. You didn't see him because you're saying the person came from behind. And so you really can't say it's this person, can you? Well, it was somebody, and the people were saying he had it. He had what? He had the purse. Oh, we have the purse. Is this your purse? Yes. Does anybody else handle your purse? Well, yes, but not that way. It's a good answer. And they said, they got the officer there, and they asked the officer about the purse. They were able to pick up a partial fingerprint on the purse. Partial. Wasn't a full fingerprint. But they did ask the policeman who was in charge of the evidence room, do you have a list of the chain of signing it out between the time it was checked in and the time it appears here? He says, well, we have most of it. He said, you have most of it? He said, well, most of it? He said, well, that's like being a little pregnant. Either you got it or you don't. He said, well, no, I don't. He said, you don't. Well, you get where this is going. It went to the jury, and he was found not guilty because the defense attorney kept hammering, no eyewitnesses, even the victim cannot identify him. They have a partial fingerprint by an incompetent police department that can't even keep a chain of ownership or integrity there. He exercised good judgment by running from this mob that he was afraid of. For good reason. Most of us would too. Running away is not in itself an admission of guilt. It's not an admission of guilt. Might be a sign of good judgment, etc. Well, after the thing, they were congratulating him and congratulating the attorney who was pro bono, public defender, and so on and so forth like that. And I asked the law students, I said, what do y'all think of that? Well, the lawyer did a good job. Is there anything more to say? The lawyer did a good job. I said, is the lawyer an officer of the court? Yes. And as an officer of the court, what is his first duty? To defend his... I said, no, it isn't. I said, you're studying to be a lawyer? I said, that's not his first duty. As an officer of the court, his first duty is to seek the truth so that justice is not compromised, and justice, the foundation of justice, is not destroyed, so that liberty, true liberty, is preserved. Thomas Jefferson, the equal administration of justice is the foundation of liberty. If you don't have the equal administration of justice, you're not free. And so what happened in that courtroom, I would contend, was a complete perversion. It's a complete perversion. Now, there are people who vigorously disagree with that. No. What did you want him to do? Well, I'm going to end with this, but I'm trying to show you how the sophists operate. Once upon a time, before a lawyer was called a lawyer, he was called a counselor. Yes, counselor. And part of his education, and by the way, there were no law schools. I'm talking about with Lincoln and all of these people. Abraham Lincoln, back then, I knew him well. No. I know that's what you all are thinking. Smart Alex. Anyway, so what you did is pretty much what you did with any, you went to an attorney and you said, can I apprentice under you? And they said yes or no. And when you did apprentice under them, they usually had a part of their house had a place where the apprentice would stay and live. He would live there. Because the idea was for you to take on the mind of this attorney. Because it's assuming that you really respected him and admired him, not simply for his intellect, but for his moral character. His moral character. And part of every reputable lawyer was not simply to read Blackstone's commentaries on common law, which, by the way, is how Lincoln got started. Did you know that? Lincoln got started that way. He was figuring out what he was going to do. And a guy came by with a stack of big, beautiful books that happened to be Blackstone's commentary. Lincoln didn't think anything about it. He wasn't for the law, and he didn't know what he was going to do. A guy from Kentucky, he didn't know. What does he know? No. There was no Derby at the time, so he didn't know. So he's there, and he buys them. He buys them. They're dirt cheap because they look good. He buys them and he starts looking through them. Wow, it's pretty good. And this is maybe I could be a lawyer. So as they say, the rest is history. But that's how he began. That's how he began as an attorney. But when you were a lawyer, in addition to Blackstone, which you had to study, which was the great authoritative commentary on British common law, which was the common law of the colonies and everything else. You had to know that. In the United States, it's still common law. You also had to become very fluent in the Bible, especially the law, the rules and the regulations, questions of justice, how mercy fits in, etc. We're not talking about doctrinal issues. We're talking about, is Jesus the Son of God and all of that. We're not talking about that. Talking about, because if you look at the Bible, I mean, there's a great deal of emphasis on law. Read St. Thomas Aquinas, the Summa Theologica. Whole big gigantic section on law, the 4 types of laws, etc. So, but that was part of it. And when you went to a lawyer, a counselor, and you sat down and you were in trouble with the law, okay, what did you do? I stole $100 from the grocery store. Okay. Did you do it? Yes. Okay. What's our defense? Our defense is to tell the truth, to tell them you did it. Also, you want to make restitution for it, and you ask for mercy by the court, and you hope not to do this again. Because Thomas Aquinas says that justice without mercy is cruelty. And you go before the judge and you say, I plead guilty. Anything else? Yes. I want to make full restitution to Mr. So-and-so. I take full responsibility. I have in place those things that I think will keep me from doing this again. I may have a job, I may have better training, I may be in a better environment, whatever it is. And the judge may say, sentence is 5 years in prison. However, the sentence is held in abey for that time period, subsequent to you not getting in trouble with the law again, and making restitution to the satisfaction of the person injured. And ultimately, with the acceptance of the court. He didn't cancel the sentence. He didn't say the sentence was not enforced because it's still active. In other words, it's with prejudice. It's with prejudice. He's going to, and if he does those things, why would you want to argue about that? The person injured has been restored. Society is better off with a person who has reclamated themselves, has become, quote unquote, a productive citizen, etc., than to throw somebody in jail for 5 years. Where is the gain there? Now, granted, that's limited kind of circumstances, etc., and so on and so forth like that. But that's what lawyers used to do. A lawyer was a counselor. They would tell you what they thought was best, not simply in terms of, can you get me off? That question was not entertained. Can I get you off? I'm not here to get you off. I'm here to counsel you in terms of what you can expect from the law, but also I'm here to counsel you how to be a better citizen and a better human being. And we're not worried that someone would say, you're judging me, you're forcing your values on me, you're forcing... No, it was an appreciation that somebody had taken the time to help you to become a better person. That radically shifted beginning in the middle to the late 19th century with the development of professional schools. And there was a whole professionalization within higher education that began to take place because they were all jealous of the sciences, especially the humanities. They all wanted to be science. So politics became political science. For many today, it's science fiction, but okay. You know, and so you have that. It was a wanting to be like the natural sciences, which the humanities are not. Humanities are not the natural sciences. They're not. But the popularity, prestige, you don't have many products being sold to you today because it is going to make you a better human being. It's going to cure your bad breath, your body odor, your falling dentures, your arches, the bags under your eyes. You can put that stuff under there now that they're peddling all over the place. All of that. You can have all that kind of stuff, rub yourself, and all the age spots go away, except in about 5 or 6 hours, and they come back, and the person who was going to ask you to marry them says, "Where did you go? Oh Lord, it ain't you, baby." You know, I mean, come on now, what happened? Lord, I mean, come on. And so, but the sophists were master at this. Now, why bring all of this up? Because the two major intellectual opponents of the sophists, Socrates and his student, Plato. Socrates and Plato. They, in other words, what you have now is what we call, today even, a cultural crisis. Now, notice please the word culture. C-U-L-T-U-R-E. The first four letters are crucial. It is what? It is a cult, which has to do with worship. Let's get Jim Jones and all of these things out of our head. Cult has to do with liturgy. It has to do with worship. It has to do with God. Liturgy is a cultic practice. So we need not get all offended or afraid or intimidated when someone says, "Oh, that liturgy is just a cultic thing." Well, it's not a cultic thing, but it is a cult. It is a cult. It is an expression of worship. It's an expression of giving glory to God. Granted, in the 21st century, it is considered to be a slam, a knock, something to be afraid of. But that's not the meaning of the word. But again, see, like, if words mean something, and we realize today they're all fungible, do whatever, we just make them up and give them whatever you want. And if you get a crowd to follow you, that's okay. You expect to be in Webster's tomorrow. Huh? So, cult has to do with worship. It has to do with morals. See? So, the cultural crisis is at its root or foundation a crisis, word crisis from the Greek. The meaning of the word crisis, K-R-I-S-I-S, crisis in Greek, it means a condition, usually health, a condition in which the outcome often involves life and death. That's the meaning. So when you say there is a crisis, which means what? You have to make decisions. The doctor comes into the room and you got 104 fever. You're not eating, you're dehydrated, your kidneys have shut down for the most part, etc. And someone says, "How's the patient doing?" Or what's the prognosis? That's what you're asking. What do you project forward? Prognosis, pro-knowledge. What's going forward? Well, we have some tough decisions ahead to make because this is a crisis situation. Yes, it means that you have some options there, and you're asking that doctor to make the best medical judgment. Prudentially, in light of this patient, in light of the circumstance, and indicate that to the family members, or those who, because the person may be unconscious, they may be incoherent, whatever. They may be impaired in some way. So naturally they have a guardian or somebody with substituted judgment, power of attorney, whatever it might be, whatever they may have. And you may have that. And so you're asking for that person because we have a number, let's say we have 2 ways we can do it, or we have 3 ways we can talk about it. And then they present it to you. They can't tell you which one to do. No more than a lawyer can tell you, this is what you need to do. You're the ultimate decision maker. It's funny, when the doctor walks in, with the white coat and the bag, all of a sudden, there's kind of a divine aura that takes place, huh? And we tend to clam up. We tend to, the old story, I assume. This fellow was a good man. He died. Even good people die. And he went to heaven. But something that really annoyed him, as much as you can be annoyed in heaven, is that when it came time to eat, he found out you still had to eat. But he was okay with that because he figures, well, the food's got to be great and it's no calories. Huh? Oh, man, it's going to be great. So it's his first time. So he's looking around, and this other guy comes along and says, hey, this your first time? He says, yeah. He says, oh, you're a newbie. Okay. Come on. He said, that's where we go. So they walk in, and much to the guy's horror, he realizes that heaven is a cafeteria in which you have to stand in line. First come, first serve. He thought for sure, he was very good. He was really a good person. He thought for sure, they'd be waiting on him. All this, like the people in purgatory, part of their getting out would be they'd come to serve those sitting down, and they wouldn't eat, by the way, or they'd be eating something else. And no, you had to stand in line. And so he's not keen about this at all. He's not an egalitarian or any of this kind of stuff. He's not happy with this. So he's standing there with his Piccadilly kind of teal-colored tray, and he's standing there like this, and he's kind of at the back of the line because he didn't know. Well, the doors are swinging open like this. Those of you that have been to charity, you haven't been, but anyway, the cafeteria doors would do this. They swing open, and the doors swing open, and into the room walks this guy, and he's in a white coat. He's got a stethoscope. He's carrying a black bag, and he comes in and he's looking around like this, and he goes right to the head of the line. Well, this guy says, hey, didn't y'all see this? Look at that. Look at this guy. He went to the head of the line. What is this? And a guy in the back says, shh. He said, that's God. He thinks he's a doctor. And so I don't know if that's true, but anyway, I just offer it up. We have this kind of conception, and what I'm getting at is, with the crisis, you have to make decisions. I mean, you have to, because to do nothing is a decision. If you're going to do nothing, the patient's going to die. So you got to try something, this, and it may be even an experimental drug, and they'll tell you that. This thing is experimental. We can use it in these limited cases, but you have to consent to it. Here's the drawback stuff now. Here's the stuff. But here's the possibility. Some have shown remarkable progress. Others no. But that's not my decision as a doctor. That's your decision. Okay. So that's what a crisis is. A crisis is making this, and when we talk about a cultural crisis, we're talking about the direction upon which a culture is going. You remember, huh? In the book of Deuteronomy, with the covenant, when they are given the chance, Moses gets them all together and says, look, I've been up to Sinai, did all of this, so on and so forth. You got a choice, and there's two roads. You know, when you come to the fork in the road, now Yogi Berra said take it, but okay. Think about it. It's great wisdom today. People go, huh, what? What does that mean? Well, you probably will be trying. Anyway, and Moses says, one way leads to life, and the other way to death. The way that leads to life is to commit yourself to the covenant, follow the commandments, and be obedient to God, and you will be God's people. The other way is the way to death, and go worship the Baal and the Canaanite gods. Go back to your golden calf and all of that stuff. That's dead. But it's up to you. Fast forward, Jesus Christ. Chapter 6, the Bread of Life Discourse. Jesus says, eat my flesh and drink my blood, and you will have life in you. Now there's a whole bunch of folk in that crowd who are his disciples. Disciples are somebody who's following him. And they're following him. Eat my flesh and drink my blood. Many of them thought, on a purely natural level, Jesus is advocating cannibalism. Because cannibalism was not unknown at that time. Neither was human sacrifice. So it's not some kind of Twilight Zone thing. It was there. It was there, and they were thinking about this. So, if you do not eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will not have life in you. Well, John tells us, it's a great thing. You see, all these people who want to say, well, the Bible is nothing but made up, and all it is these nice, wonderful stories, and everybody's great, and turns out they have an amoeba understanding or familiarity with the Bible. John says, when Jesus says this, they say, this is a hard saying. Who can do this? Who can accept this? This is hard. Not only that, John says in chapter 6, at the end, many chose to be in his company no longer. They said, sorry, I kicked the can down the road as far as I can, but this, I can't buy it. All right, okay, that's fine. That's what they decided. They came in the road and they said, can't do this. The disciples become upset. You know, Jesus, notice what Jesus does not do. Come back here, or I'm going to turn you worse than a pillar of salt. Get back here. Or, well, come on back. Just kidding. You know, he had a bad day, out in the sun too long, bad bagel, I don't know, whatever. No. He turns to the 12. And he says, what about you? Will you leave me too? It's a magnificent, magnificent expression of freedom. You can't have true discipleship or true love by force, by coercion. You can force people to work together, do things together, but you can never force them to love. Never. That's one sacred place that no totalitarian, no one can violate. you're always free in your own mind to say yes and no. That's the ultimate freedom. They can physically force you, compel you. But what they cannot do is force you to consent in your heart or your mind. That they can't do. And that's when Peter says, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of everlasting life. We have come to know and believe that you are the Messiah, the one of our Heavenly Father. See? But the decision was theirs. That was a moment of tremendous crisis. Tremendous crisis that's a significant event. The Israelites with Moses at Sinai, that's a significant event. And to place it in the secular context, the sophist and all of this pluralism and all of this disagreement and all of this thing swirling around, this relativism, and we can't agree on anything, and what's going on, and people are doing whatever they want, etc. They're in a cultural crisis. And I'd suggest to you that in many ways, the 21st century can look at this as a distant mirror. A distant mirror. We're looking at ourselves here. We're in a cultural crisis. Believe it or not, we are. Over many of these things, you know. So we have this. And it's not simply, my God, it's not reduced to politics. Somehow, if we're going to get a Republican, oh my God, happy days are here again. Huh? The sky above is blue again. Let us sing a song. Oh my God, please. Or, oh, if he gets back in, oh my God, it's the end of the world. I mean, I hear people say this about the church. Oh, he's ruining the church. Oh, Pope Francis, he's ruining it. Oh, he's the great one that we need. I told you, huh? Maybe I didn't. Last week, Pope Francis. Oh, so many people were kind of shocked, especially the uptight, upright, so-called Catholics that are more Catholic than the Pope. My Lord, spare me from them. What happened? The Pope had the audacity to meet with a worldwide group of comedians. It is so wonderful. Because if there's anything that's a sign of God, it's humor. It's humor. I mean, I'm so tired of people walking around looking like they need an industrial enema. Huh? I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. Huh? Saint Teresa was much nicer. She said, Lord, spare me from gloomy saints. That's what she said. I mean, you know, oh my Lord, please stop that. And so he met with them. And humor, you realize how humorless our society has become? Say something humorous, and the person immediately has to say, well, you know, I'm just kidding. You ever notice how often they say that today? Whereas once upon a time we would have said that, and we all would have kind of laughed, because we knew the difference between laughing at and laughing with. I can laugh at myself. Fulton Sheen, you know, so many people. Oh, Fulton Sheen. Great churchman, by the way. One of the first things he said when he begins, he said, one of the most important things is to convey to the audience that you're not above them. And the best way to do that is to tell a joke on yourself. Laugh at yourself. Because you're not saying, I'm up here and all you stupid people out there or down here like this. No, no. Once you do that, you've lost the audience. And if you're there just to parade and walk around, or are you there to really communicate something that you think is important, that would help them, or is vital to them, etc.? And realize that I'm not thanking God, I'm not like the rest of people, as the publican and the Pharisee in the temple. And so humor diffuses so many things. It's very hard to be angry or upset with someone if you can share a laugh with them, if you can see the silliness of it. Like, does this thing really matter? Many times when husbands and wives are at each other's throat, okay, over, I understand little stones derail big trains, but, Winston Churchill said, the battle was so fierce because the stakes were so small. Think about it. Think about it a moment. But the one who can say, or start to kind of take a breath and kind of laugh, it almost becomes contagious, because the other person then, I don't have to be defensive anymore. I don't have to dig in it. And I really am being Mickey Mouse and stupid in this. And they can then share a laugh, and they wonder, wow, look at what this did. This diffused the whole situation. This brought, this was like the pin in the balloon. It took the air out of the room, so everybody could breathe. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference. But as the Pope was walking up with this gathering of comedians, which offended some people as being silly. Anyway, I don't want to even get into that. It's stupid. Anyway, they had a number of guest visitors and these kind of people there as well. And they had this, I mentioned it, this church lady that was there. She was probably in her 70s, late 60s, 70s, or something like that. She was there. And as the Pope was walking up and doing all of this, and he gets to the podium to address and welcome them, she, naturally, they're always sitting in the front. It's amazing. So she's in the front, and she says, I'm praying for you, Holy Father. And he says, is it pro or con? See, as if somehow the Pope doesn't know that there's a whole bunch of people who don't think he's the legitimate Pope, if you can believe that craziness. And then you have people who think he's wonderful, he's the Holy Spirit incarnate and all this kind of stuff. And he continually says, it's not about me. It's about, I'm trying to discern what the Holy Spirit is asking of the church now. I'm trying to discern it, and I need prayers. I need prayers. That's what I need. Now that's offensive? My Lord, please. But you see that, that the idea, again, of having these, get back to this idea of making a decision involves something that is deeper than simply a political shift of things, an economic shift of things. It goes to the very spiritual and moral foundation of a people. And this is especially important if you happen to be a republic like the United States. Because John Adams, one of the most brilliant and gifted of all presidents, the only problem is nobody could stand to be in the room with him. It's true, that's the problem. Because he thought he was superior to everyone else. He could never learn anything. He knew everything, and he had a very, very bad, just a sour view of life. He did. I mean, he did. And it was. I mean, he was In other words, he was not likable. He was not likable. But as far as his 2-volume commentary on the Constitution is still the best thing ever written. Still the best thing ever written. If you're serious about finding out about the Constitution, put all this other stuff away. Read John Adams. And John Adams said, the Constitution of the United States is only made for a religious people of the Christian Judeo ethic. Why? Because it is grounded in a moral and spiritual foundation of the 10 Commandments, the teachings of Christ, and of right and wrong. Because you see, we say today, I got to be free in order that I can find the truth. See, I got to be free, and then I'll find the truth. That's not what the Scripture says. That's not what Jesus says. What does Jesus say? What does he say in terms of freedom? No. What is words? What does he say? What is that?
Truth will set you free.
Very good. The truth will set you free. We say today, I got to have freedom. Then I have to have freedom. Then I'll get the truth. Oh, no. Jesus says, you have to have truth first. Otherwise, your freedom goes all over the place. It becomes licentiousness. It becomes whatever I want. It becomes my truth. That's what happens. See, we've flipped that. Well, Jesus said we had to be free. No. He said, it is the truth that sets you free. Because without truth, your freedom, your will is not guided towards that which is really good and proper. Today, freedom. St. Paul dealt with all. None of this is new. Again, that's why the Bible will forever be eternal. It deals, the clothing is different, the situations, the technology, all of that's different. Yes, we understand that. What hasn't changed is human nature. What hasn't changed is human nature. That's perennial. And when you read the Bible, and really read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, say, wow, how smart these people are. Yeah, it's the inspired Word of God. It's not like reading Freud or Dr. Ruth or whoever you read, and all these people. No, or Dr. Phil or whatever it is. Oh, Lord. But it's different. And so into the scene comes Socrates. Just bear with me. I realize it's time to go and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, hang with me. So into that comes Socrates. Okay, but I wanted to say one final thing about this general crisis. Plato is a student, the chief student of Socrates. And in the 7th letter of Plato, commenting on the situation that's going on in Athens at the time, Plato wrote, "The written law and the customs of our ancestors were being corrupted at an astonishing rate." Okay? We're being corrupted at an astonishing rate. Now, Socrates, 469 to 399 BC. Just let me give, what time is it, Betty?
8:32.
Okay, well, bear with me just a few minutes. I'm going to stop. Socrates never wrote a book. Neither did Jesus. Socrates never wrote a book because he believed that writing was the end of thinking. And let that roll around your head. How many people run to their computers today and read it on the computer, and they would die believing that that was true? They don't believe the scriptures, but they believe that. I saw it on a computer. It's got to be true. Really? Well, I saw on the scriptures that you're a homicidal maniac, and I believe it. Get away from me because I'm going to shoot you or call the cops. How about that? How's that working for you, baby? You know, come on. So he never wrote a book because he believed that the printed word, once a person sees it printed, it becomes almost a thing that people worship. It almost stops you. Well, I read it. Just because I read it doesn't mean it's true, or it can't be debated, or it can't be altered or questioned. Well, it's in the textbook. Well, and they do such a thing as revision of textbooks. They do have errors. New things come along. But he believed that writing it down and seeing it, this is the answer. I read it. There's the answer. And of course, for Socrates, we don't want to rush to that, the answer. We have to go through the whole process of Socratic dialogue, the Socratic method, where for every answer there's a question. And for that answer, there's another question. And that's the importance of dialogue, etc. So he never wrote, and he believed that the road to getting as far as we can go is through what we call the Socratic method of question, answer, followed by more questions of clarification, etc. For example, if I ask you, we're talking about justice, let's say. We're talking about justice. Oh, you're talking about justice. And you know, everybody's, and I say to you, okay, what do you mean by justice? That's the first and most important question in any kind of Socratic dialogue. Define your terms. Because so many people are arguing and they assume everybody else is understanding what they're talking about in their terms, not the term of the other person. See, what I have to be able to do, like justice, I have an idea of justice, but maybe it's a different idea than Miss Dawn. Now, the fact that she has an idea of justice and I have an idea of justice, the question then is right and wrong. Socrates says, no, that's not the question. That's the problem. That's the problem. Because once I say, well, Dawn is right, I'm wrong, and I go away. Socrates said, no. Let's understand what Dawn means by justice, and let's see what you mean by it. And before we move to the battleground, let's see if we can find common ground. And then from that, we might be able to then move to where we can have a synthesis. I'm jumping ahead because this is like Hegel, which I shouldn't give you, but I will, because I'm nice. I'm almost finished. Hang in there. No insurrections yet. Hold on. This is the Hegelian dialectic. You have the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. Dawn says, justice is. That's the thesis, because that's what Dawn is advocating. So that's the thesis. That's the positive state. This is what Dawn in her authoritative way, that's what it is. Okay. But then, for some reason known only to God, a little mousy other person says, well, I don't want to be mean, but I don't think it's that. I think it's this. Risking the wrath of Dawn. Okay. So then you have the antithesis. That is, you have something opposite or opposing the Dawn thesis. Now, Socrates says it's a terrible thing if now you do this. You cut that off and you say, who's right? Let's see. Dawn signs the checks, and I got to work with her 9 hours. She's definitely right. Sorry, Mousy. There's the door. No. Socrates says, no, let's look and see what Dawn is saying. Let's see what this person is saying. And let's ask the person who is advancing the antithesis of what Dawn is saying as to what is it in Dawn's definition that troubles you or you find objectionable. And they may say what it is, whatever it is. And then Dawn may say, yes, but you don't understand. This is what I mean. Socrates goes, good. Notice now what we have. We now have a further clarification of what we're talking about. In other words, I don't want to be defending what I'm not promoting. And I don't want you to defend what you're not promoting. If we're serious about actually fruitfully talking to one another. So that's a good thing. So then I say, okay, so let's put that together into Dawn's definition. But now, I can't proceed unless what I do is to the satisfaction of Dawn. Not to my satisfaction. Not to this person's satisfaction. And Dawn says, yeah, I'm okay with that. Okay? Now, then that becomes the thesis. And somebody says, well, wait a minute, I think there's something missing. Okay. What do you think is missing? X, whatever X is. Okay, now let's get that. Do you have any objection to that? No. No, the fact that I never thought of that, and that makes it better. Back to the other person who started all of this with the antithesis. And they say, no, I didn't think about it either. Oh, good. So now we have another thesis. Does anybody have an objection to that? And people in the room say, no, that's pretty good. That's good. Okay, so that's where we stop. That's where we stop. Stopping the dialogue does not mean we stop the reflection. Because Dawn may go home, look this over and say, oh, I wish I had brought this up. Or I wish I had said that. So at the next dialogue, Dawn gets to speak first because she is the one who first advanced the thesis. And Dawn says, I want to add this. And the other, somebody else may say, yeah, but I would like to question that part of the addition to the definition. Okay, what do you find objectionable? That person says something. Then the person who was the antithesis of Dawn says, well, no, I don't see that as what it is. Then you have to say to that person, how did you interpret or how did you see what that person added? And why do you find it defective? Legitimate question. Notice, I'm not saying who's right and wrong. I'm trying to move in the direction where we move to common ground and not battleground. See? And so you have the synthesis, antithesis, etc. That takes place here. And so for Socrates, the beginning is an ongoing process with the attainment of truth, but as far as one can go with it, it may require ongoing dialogue, which, when you think about it, is what most good relationships in family, friends, business, etc., require. But it begins with, if we're going to talk about friendship and all of these things, very high levels of abstraction. Tell me what you mean by them. Because we might have more in common than it first appears. And I can never advance anything until I can explain your position to your satisfaction, not to my satisfaction. Because to explain it to my satisfaction, and it's not yours, I'm asking you to defend what you don't propose. Why should you? And so many people get caught in that instead of saying, well, wait a minute. I'll give you one final example and then we'll get out of here. Person says, I don't believe in all that God stuff. Oh, okay. I'm supposed to collapse at that moment. I say, oh, okay. And I can say, oh, just another nut, another atheist. All right, good time for that. Or I can say, well, tell me what you understand by the term God. And they tell me, God is this tyrant. God is this punishing God. It's a Jonathan Edwards God of the 17th century, his famous sermon, one of the greatest sermons ever preached, one of the most famous sermons in the pre-colonial period. A sinner in the hands of an angry God in the First Great Awakening in the colonial period. You should read it. And basically that's his picture of God. The God is just up there waiting for you to mess up so he can come down on you. That's what he is. And you say, I'm an atheist too. What do you mean? I don't believe in that God. The God you believe in, I don't believe in. So I'm an atheist to your God. Because the scriptures, my Catholic faith, and my experience, my overall experience, is not that. So if that's your conception of God and you believe that, then I'm with you. You're right. J.B. Phillips wrote a wonderful little book. It's only about that big. Like that, little pocket book, about that big. Wonderful book. It's called, Is Your God Too Small? Not is your God too big, is your God too small? And he goes through all of these shrunken views of God that people have. And he said it's a terrible insult that we actually pray to a God who's too small. And it's a great book. It's a little minor classic. If you have a chance, you should read it. But Socrates believed in this, believed in dialogue. Final thing, since we have nothing from Socrates himself, how do we know all of this stuff about Socrates? Well, we're very grateful for Plato, in which we have 26 dialogues in all that's preserved. There were more, but the ones that we have been able to preserve and find to date are 26 dialogues. And we're going to go over these, but we're not going to go over the 26 dialogues. The dialogue is this question and answering. Number one begins within yourself, your soul. Secondly, it continues with others. And thirdly, it takes place above in your soul's desire for the transcendental or eternal truth. So those are the three movements of the dialogue that take place. And from these, today we have 10, we have what's it, 12-step program. We have 10 commandments, 14 stations of the way of the cross, 9 days for the novena, 3 for the Blessed Trinity, 2 natures, so on. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to become Mosaic and hanker up with old Moses. And you, oh yes, you do. You have 8 Beatitudes. 10 core principles that we're going to look at. 10 core, not now, don't worry. I saw the terror on your face. Oh, Lord. 10 core principles in these 26 dialogues. And we'll go through them rather quickly. 10 core principles in order to understand the pivotal role of Socrates in the development of the Western philosophical tradition, which is still with us today and carried on powerfully through his student Plato. And Plato passed it on to Aristotle. Aristotle was a student of Plato. So we're going to look at that. Now, my understanding is by a vote of the mob, I mean the class, I'm sorry. I was looking for a car to run under because I am definitely innocent. The next week is July the 4th. So realizing that you will probably be praying for the country and in deep prayer somewhere, not. We will meet again, I suppose, on the 11th of July. Now, so that you don't feel neglected, so that you do not feel neglected, I'm going to try it this way, and if it doesn't work, then I will ask somebody to do it specifically. I would like somebody to give a 5 to 10 minute, at most, presentation on Aristotle's 4 causes. The 4 causes, according to Aristotle, in his Metaphysics, and 5 to 10 minutes, you don't have to give us War and Peace, would someone volunteer to do that? If not, I already have somebody in mind who is going to be the pigeon in the room. So, all right, since nobody is willing to.
I'll do it.
You'll do it? Thank you. Thank you very much. So, this gentleman here has volunteered, and the 4 causes according to Aristotle, and 5-10 minutes at the most, and because they're going to be very important as we turn to more and more of the discussion of God, and especially to the question of Christian morality. We have to know how, especially Catholic theology, implements these causes. It doesn't say it explicitly. That's why we're going over this. But if you want to get an in-depth understanding of the Catholic moral tradition in its basic things, we have to understand causality. We have to understand causality because it's directly related to human nature. And human nature is ultimately lifted up to reflect God, in whose image and likeness human nature is made. So we will. I appreciate very much your willingness to do that, and so we'll do that. And it would also be helpful if you all would look that up as well, so that you can assist, or any questions you may have. Our newly minted expert on the 4 causes will be more than happy to answer you, and to do that. So, see, this is metastasizing far worse than you thought. I know. What do they say? Never volunteer in the Army. So anyway, but we'll see how it goes. So please, for next time, and since we won't see you on the 4th, I hope you're around on the 5th. And my advice is don't take too much of the 5th on the 4th, so that you can be back. That's right. Adoration or moderation?
Adoration next Friday.
Oh, yes. I thought you were saying moderation.
No, adoration.
See, she's so holy. She's already into, God and worship and all that. Here I am with Jack Daniels and everything. Oh, God. I should keep my mouth shut. Anyway. All right. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Almighty and gracious God, we offer you glory, praise, and thanksgiving for your gift of time, the gift of this night, and you, O Holy Spirit, for your indwelling presence. May each day we open our whole being. Please come with your sanctifying presence, that we may serve as your faithful temple and vessels of your sanctifying presence in the world, in the church, and in those places we touch each day. For you are the Lord and giver of life. Please bless us in our return home.